I came back to Fort Collins for a weekend in early October. I had been living in Denver for 3 years and rarely visited home. My parents' house was empty, so I planned to spend a couple of quiet days there, sorting through old things and resting. On Saturday, Talia Brooks texted me. We had shared a desk since 8th grade, then drifted apart after graduation, and now she was living here again. Her message was short. "Are you in town? Let's grab a drink at Copper Lark." It was a small bar near the old railroad tracks, one we used to dream about going to when we were teenagers. We met up, had a beer, then another. Talia caught me up on who had gotten married, who had divorced, who had left town, and who never did. Then came the funny stories. I laughed more than I had in months. Near the end of the night, I noticed him. Gideon Shaw was standing at the bar, tall, wearing a simple dark jacket, with the same calm face that used to make me blush for no reason back in school. We were never a couple. We hung out in a group a few times, and once he walked me home after a football game. I had a quiet crush on him back then, but I never told him. Talia saw him and waved. He came over and smiled. We talked about work, moving to different cities, and how life had turned out. And suddenly, I realized I was still looking at him through old memories. That was my mistake. 10 years had passed since high school. A little drunk, I said something I would never have said sober. I admitted that I had been in love with him back in school. I said it quickly and awkwardly like a joke. He laughed briefly without mocking me. I felt embarrassed and relieved at the same time. Talia checked the time and leaned toward me. She said it was time to go home. Gideon, on the other hand, suggested continuing the night. He said his friends were renting a house outside of town, that a couple of other classmates I had not seen in years would be there, with music, a good atmosphere, just our people. He said it calmly, without pressure. While he was talking, another guy walked up to him and whispered something in his ear. Talia pulled me aside and quietly told me not to go. She said she knew Gideon from school, but she did not know his friends, and neither did I. She tried to talk me out of it. I shrugged and said everything was fine. I said I was an adult and just wanted to keep hanging out and talking a little longer with my old school crush. We hugged near the exit. Talia asked me to text her when I got home. I promised I would, and I honestly believed this was just normal adult impulsiveness, the kind you cringe about the next morning. Gideon walked me to his car. We drove for about 15 minutes along dark roads. I tried to text Talia, but the signal kept cutting in and out, and the message would not send. That often happens in mountainous areas. The house was at the end of a long driveway among trees, with mountains rising behind it. Big 2 stories. The porch light was on, and music was coming from inside. When we went in, I saw a huge stone fireplace in the living room. Around it, on couches and along the wall, were 6 or 7 guys. I did not have time to count. What stood out immediately was that there were no women at all. All of them were clearly drunk. Gideon introduced me and suggested we go to the kitchen to open some wine. As we walked through the house, I noticed even more guys spread out on sofas. I asked him what the occasion was and why there were no women besides me. He said I was an exception, then went quiet in a way that felt strange. After about 15 minutes, I said that I should probably head home. I said it lightly, as if I was just tired. At first, Gideon tried to convince me to stay, saying I had just arrived. Then he smiled and said he would call me a taxi. He fiddled with his phone, said he had ordered one, and that it would arrive in 10 minutes. 15 minutes passed, no taxi. Gideon kept refilling my wine glass and started touching me more insistently. He was very drunk by then. I pretended to sip the wine, but in reality, I was sobering up and finally understanding how bad the situation was. Suddenly, a guy I did not know came up and started hugging me. When I looked at him, I saw his pupils were huge. He was high. I stepped back and looked at Gideon, silently asking for help, but he just stood there smiling. That was the moment real fear hit me. I realized I was trapped and I could not stay there. I apologized and said I needed to use the bathroom. It was the first clear thought I had: get out of the room and find a way to leave. Inside the bathroom, I locked the door and turned on the water so they would hear the noise. I was shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. The call would not go through. Then I sent Talia a short message. "I'm at Gideon's, house outside town. Only guys here. I'm scared." I hit send over and over until it finally went through. The bathroom window was small, but it opened. There was a trash bin underneath it. I turned off the water and listened. Someone stopped outside the door. It was Gideon. He asked if I was okay. I said yes, that I just did not feel great after the beer and wine. He said he would bring me some kind of pill that would help. Then another voice cut in, saying something like, "Why are you being gentle with her? You know why you invited her. Send her out here." I was terrified. I opened the window and barely managed to squeeze out. It was cold outside. I felt for the trash bin with my foot, stepped onto it, then climbed down to the ground. I looked around and saw streetlights in the distance. I ran toward them as fast as I could. After a while, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from Talia. "I'm coming. Where exactly are you?" The signal had finally appeared. I ducked behind a van parked by the road, caught my breath, and sent her my location. About 10 minutes later, I heard voices behind me. Carefully peeking out, I saw 3 guys with flashlights. Gideon was one of them. They were about 50 feet away and had not seen me yet. One of them snapped at Gideon, something like, "How could he let me get away and ruin their night?" Suddenly, headlights flooded the spot where I was hiding. At the same moment, my phone rang. The guys turned and saw me. They started moving toward me, then breaking into a run. The car that had lit up my hiding place screeched to a stop right in front of me. It was Talia. I jumped in, she slammed the gas, and we got out of there fast. For the first time that night, I felt safe. Because of my stupidity and naivety, I came dangerously close to something truly awful. And only because of my childhood friend did I manage to escape it. I felt uneasy and exchanged a confused look with my girlfriend, Nora, when I saw our guide quickly make the sign of the cross near a stone marker at the entrance to the village, then immediately act like nothing had happened. We had been looking for places like this for a long time, locations where nature is still raw and untouched, where photos do not look like glossy travel postcards. Not because we were chasing danger, we were just tired of civilization, of crowds, of routes that feel like conveyor belts. Her friends called it the obsession with unique experiences. I thought of it as a normal desire to really feel a country, instead of just passing through it. We chose Peru, the Ayacucho region. Then, we narrowed it down to a small village high in the mountains called Pucutinha. On the map, it was just a dot squeezed between folds of terrain. There was nothing about it in any guidebook. That was exactly what drew us in. Our guide's name was Eloy. He spoke decent English and said he knew locals who would either let us stay with them or rent us part of a house for a short time. The trip to the village was harder than we expected. Not dangerous, just exhausting. The altitude, the constant elevation changes, the cold wind, and the feeling that the road itself was slowly draining your strength. When we finally saw Pucutinha, all of that faded into the background. The village sat on a slope, like it was stuck to the mountainside. Simple stone houses with low roofs, and all around, mountains. Endless mountains and unreal views. Pure, untouched nature. The couple renting us part of their house were named Ricardo and Lucia. They were polite in a very neutral way, just enough not to seem unfriendly. We were given a small room and a tiny kitchen. Eloy explained a few rules. Do not go far without him on the first day. Do not photograph people without permission. And do not walk around at night. The first 2 days were amazing. That was exactly why we had come. We woke up early, followed trails above the village, climbed ridges, sat on rocks, and watched clouds drift below us. The air was so clean and sharp, it sometimes felt like it could cut your lungs if you breathed in too deeply. Nora was happy. She laughed when the wind tangled her hair. She typed short notes on her phone so she could later post about the trip. She kept saying the place looked like the world had not managed to ruin it yet. But the locals looked at us strangely, not aggressively, not openly hostile, just off. We told ourselves it was because they rarely saw tourists and did not know how to react. If we greeted people on the street, they nodded and walked away. If Nora tried to ask about hiking trails or local customs, the conversation ended after the first sentence. Doors were closed calmly, but quickly. Once, I heard two women talking near a well. When they noticed our footsteps, they stopped mid-sentence and hurried away. I told myself this was normal. Small villages react this way to outsiders, especially places that almost never see tourists. We looked different. We did not belong. On the third day, I woke up early. It was still dark, but a thin strip of light was already forming in the east. Our guide had gone to the city for a few days. I turned on my camping lamp and realized Nora was not beside me. I stayed calm. The day before, she had also woken up earlier than me and gone out to watch the sunrise with a cup of coffee. But as it got lighter, I noticed her jacket was still hanging on the back of a chair. Her hiking boots were by the wall. Her backpack was untouched. The only footwear she had, besides her boots, were the warm house slippers we bought on the way. I assumed she might have stayed outside a bit longer. I lay there and waited. 5 minutes, 10, 20, half an hour. The room filled with light. I got up, put on my hoodie, and stepped into the narrow hallway. The house was unnaturally quiet. I could only hear the wind outside. In the mountains, it never truly stops. I called out Nora's name, first quietly, then louder. No answer. I went to the owner's kitchen. Ricardo was sitting near the stove, fixing something. Lucia was setting cups on the table. I asked if they had seen Nora. Ricardo looked up at me and silently shrugged. Lucia said something short in Spanish that I understood as, "We do not know." I went outside. The village was waking up. Smoke rose from chimneys. Someone was carrying water. I called Nora's name again, louder this time. A few people looked at me, then immediately turned away. I approached a group of men near a shed and asked slowly, using simple words, if anyone had seen an American woman with short dark hair. They exchanged glances. One said something to another, then all three of them simply walked away. I went back for the satellite phone and called Eloy, but he did not answer. I searched the edges of the village, the trails we had walked, and the small stone ledge where it was perfect to watch the sunrise. Nothing. I ran through possibilities in my head. Maybe she went farther than the previous days and would be back soon. Maybe she slipped and twisted her ankle. But time kept passing, and Nora did not return. By midday, I went back to the owners and asked them to help search. Together we walked through the entire village, but found nothing. By evening, I returned to the house and collapsed onto the bed without even undressing. That night, I barely slept. At dawn, I made a decision that I still hate myself for, and at the same time understand that I had no other option. I had to go down to the nearest city to contact the police and the consulate. I managed to reach Eloy, and we agreed he would wait for me at a parking area that would take me almost half a day to reach on foot. The distance to the nearest city was around 150 miles along a difficult mountain road. I left a note for Nora just in case and started the descent. At the police station, I spoke with a tired officer who listened calmly. I showed him photos of Nora and explained when and how she disappeared. At the end of the conversation, he nodded. Then he said it was not the first case in that area over the past few months. My vision went dark for a moment. He did not go into detail. He said there had been 3 missing female tourists, that the region was difficult to search, mountainous terrain, scattered settlements, limited resources. At the consulate, they helped me with a translator and an official report. I thought that after that, things would finally start moving faster. They didn't. Weeks passed in endless repetition. I told the same story again and again. I showed the same photos. I met with search coordinators. I kept calling Eloy whenever there was signal. Eloy answered a couple of times and said that in the village, no one knows anything. His voice sounded frightened. I stayed in the city for several weeks until I ran out of strength and money. Nora was never found. No clues. A person simply vanished. I returned home to the United States alone. Daniel and I live in a quiet neighborhood in Columbus. Just a regular, calm street where in the evenings you only hear the occasional passing car and dogs barking somewhere far off. We both work a lot, so vacation felt almost ceremonial to us. We were gone for 10 days, nothing exotic, no risky adventures, just a change of scenery. We got back late in the evening. Tired, but happy to finally be home, in our own house, in our own bed. In the first few minutes after walking inside, I could not even tell what was wrong. It felt like someone had lightly rearranged the kitchen. A couple of chairs were overturned. There was a faint sense of disorder on the table. The microwave door was open, with dried splatters inside. The sink was full of dishes we definitely had not left behind. Daniel checked the windows and doors. At first glance, everything looked intact. The locks were fine. The frames were undamaged. The glass unbroken. No obvious signs of a break-in. We decided we would look more carefully in the morning and talk to the neighbors, see if anyone had noticed something strange. We went upstairs, took showers, changed, and went to bed. I fell asleep quickly, but the sleep was restless. Not long after, I woke up to a quiet sound, like something being dropped in the kitchen. I froze and listened. A wooden house usually has its own nighttime noises. Something cracks, the fridge kicks on, the thermostat clicks softly. But this was different. I got up and quietly opened the bedroom door. The hallway was dark, and downstairs I could see a patch of moonlight on the brown hardwood floor. I took a few careful steps, trying to be as silent as possible, and then I heard it again. Someone opened the refrigerator. Then I heard drawers and cabinet doors being pulled open. Like the person knew exactly what they were looking for and was not afraid to be there. The rustle of packaging, then chewing. A few seconds later, the sharp click of a soda can opening. I went back and woke Daniel. He sat on the edge of the bed, still half asleep. I did not explain much, just pointed toward the door. We both listened, and he heard the same sounds I had. Daniel stepped into the hallway without trying to hide his footsteps. I stayed in the bedroom doorway. He turned on his phone's flashlight and loudly said that he was calling the police, and that whoever was in the house needed to leave immediately. I had never heard that tone from him before. Almost instantly, there was a sharp crack, a crash, the sound of breaking glass. Then came a series of heavy, dull impacts. And after that, everything went quiet. About 10 minutes passed. Not a single sound came from the kitchen. We turned on all the lights in the house. When we walked into the kitchen, the scene looked like the ending of a bad dream. Crumbs were scattered across the table. An open bag of chips lay there. A soda can had been knocked over, with a sticky puddle spreading across the floor. And the back door. It had always been a light wooden door with glass in the upper part, something I thought of as more decorative than protective. Now it was smashed. The lock and a chunk of the door frame lay on the floor. The upper glass panel was gone. Nearby, there were drops of blood on the floor. Whoever had been inside must have cut himself breaking through the door. In the morning, we searched the house carefully, trying to understand how any of this had happened. In the basement, I felt a cold draft. Near the ground, there was a narrow window. It was open. In the far corner of the basement was our old mattress. Next to it were crumpled food wrappers, an empty water bottle, and syringes. The realization hit hard. He had been a drug user. Everything suddenly made sense. He had been getting into the house through that window, hiding down there, and coming up to the kitchen to eat. That was why there were no signs of forced entry when we first got home. There had been none. After everything, we changed the locks, installed cameras, and replaced the back door with a sturdier one, just in case. I am grateful that the intruder chose to run instead of attack. I do not know how this would have ended otherwise.